Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
All right, welcome everybody to Jammin with Jamboard, Google's digital whiteboard. My name is Anne-Marie Molinari-Sanders. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Katie Snow, and I'm so very pleased to welcome Michelle Vick as our presenter today. Michelle is currently the Associate Director of TCAL's new Distance Education Professional Development Center. Prior to coming to TCAL, Michelle taught ESL for McLennan Community College's Adult Education and Literacy Program, working primarily with ESL for professionals. Michelle came to Texas AEL with over 15 years of experience working with English language learners and managing English language programs in North Africa and the Middle East. She loves any chance she gets to speak Arabic. Michelle has a master's in education with a specialization in mind-brain education. So feel free to engage her in a discussion about the science of learning. So everybody, please give Michelle a very warm welcome. And thank you, Michelle, for being here.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, for that. Okay, so just a few things right here at the beginning as we get started. I'm really happy to be here with you all. I am a Tech and Tell groupie. I have no idea how many I have attended or watched the recordings later. So it's really fun to get to be offering one myself. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be learning today about Google Jamboard, and what I'm hoping that you walk away from this presentation with is an understanding of what Jamboard is. And I want you to learn why it's such a great tool, because I think it is awesome. I want you to discover some uses for Jamboard and really think about how you might use it in the classroom. And then we're going to get started with the basics of using Jamboard. So near the end, we're going to go on to a jam and you're going to get to do a few things. So what is Jamboard? Jamboard is a free Google app, and it is a collaborative digital whiteboard that all students can access from a laptop with or without a Google account. That part, that caveat where I say from a laptop, that's pretty important. And the reason it's important is that if you send someone a link to get on a jam from a laptop, they can click on it and go on and write on your jam without having to log into any kind of account at all, which is really nice. But it doesn't work the same way if they're on the phone. So if they're on a phone, they can open up Jamboard within the web browser to create their own Jamboards with their own Google account, but they can't open your link that you send them as a teacher without the downloaded app. That is one of the limitations to Jamboard. And it wasn't always that way. When I was teaching in the beginning, that was not the case, but it is now. So I wanted to just show you before we go any further, for those of you who have never been on Jamboard, this is a picture of a sample Jamboard. So this is one that I used in my class. You can see it says fall 2021. So at the beginning of the class last fall, I created a jam. And I set this background picture that you can see in the background. That image is set. The students can't do anything to that. And then they went on and they added sticky notes with their ideas for our group norms. So it was a way for us to collaboratively brainstorm, who do we want to be as a class to one another? What kind of community are we forming here? We're going to go over later how to use each of these tools here on the left, but if you had never seen a jam before, I wanted you to see one before I keep speaking about why to use it or how to use it. So why use Jamboard? Well, first of all, it is free, which is great. And it is free with unlimited jams. So it is only limited by the storage of your Google account. If you are not storing a lot of things on your Google Drive, then you don't have anything to worry about. For me, because I have a lot of videos of my teaching stored on my Google Drive, then that's a problem. But as far as the number of individual jams that you can create using Jamboard, it's limitless, which is why I use it more than Padlet, because the free account on Padlet, you can only have a limited number. I think it's 3. And so then you have to like recycle or erase. And I like to keep these as a record of things. So I don't want to recycle them or erase. So number one reason I like to use Jamboard is it's free. It makes thinking processes visible. So you get to see in real time what your students are thinking, how they might be doing in a brainstorm and what kind of brainstorming processes are happening, or if they're sorting something. I'll show you an example of that. You get to see like, how are they thinking about categories? So it really uncovers some of those thinking processes. It's a great tool for collaboration. So it gives your students an opportunity to work together in real time. And when we were, just switching to remote teaching, I was looking for how can I get that tool where my students can be brainstorming and collaborating in real time digitally or remotely. It's really great for student engagement. I've used it at all sorts of levels, from beginner to advanced. I've used it with ESL students. I've used it in professional development with adults, and it's very engaging for people. They love getting to express themselves, and it promotes this active learning as they're moving things around and making connections between things. And it can be used synchronously and asynchronously. So I have mostly used it synchronously. I'm going to teach you how to assign a jam on Google Classroom. And when you do that, you can create an individual copy for each student in Google Classroom, and then they can work on it asynchronously. I have also used it once as an introduce yourself bulletin board that I sent to students before the beginning of a course along with the syllabus. So I sent the syllabus, and then I sent a link to a jam where they could introduce themselves and they could be seeing who each other were, who all's going to be in the class ahead of time. So that was an asynchronous use that I did. The other reason I love it, there are loads of pre-created templates on the internet that are free. And I'm going to show you some of those today. And you can use seeing the templates has expanded my ideas of how to use this tool.
Michelle,
Yes.
I saw an opening. We have a question why we're here, and I think it's a very good one. Will you be showing how a teacher can use it in a classroom setting that's in person, so a face-to-face class?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to say that is not a part of my plan for today, but I'm about to get to the what could you use it for? And I'll try to think about that and give a couple of ideas. Okay, we're going to go on. Oh, well, last thing is it is customizable. So there are a lot of pre-created templates, and I used those in the beginning, but then I began to create my own background images and customize it to be exactly what I wanted it to be. So let's talk about uses of Jamboard. And as I'm thinking about this question that has been asked about in a face-to-face classroom, in the face-to-face classroom, especially if you have taught your students to download the app, and you know that your students have Google accounts, which the program that I was working in last year, we actually made sure that every student had a Gmail account, and they knew how to use it before they left orientation, which was really helpful for us if we wanted to use any of these Google products, or if we wanted them to use Google Classroom, and in asking them to be responsible for responding to our emails. So if you do that, then you could have them do any of the things that I'm going to talk about while sitting in the classroom as well. It could be used remotely, but the same things could happen sitting in the classroom. And there are some times when that might be more beneficial than having them do something, in group. And I actually just read today about a program that has gone completely paperless. And there might be some benefits to going completely paperless, or if your program is being asked to reduce their paper use, then any of the things that we talk about, you can do this in the physical classroom instead of giving them some sort of paper handout. So openers, there are a lot of free templates for doing icebreaker activities or openers using Google Jamboard. And I'm going to show you a sample on the next slide. You can also use it for exit tickets. And again, there are a lot of free templates for using it with exit tickets at the end of your class. And this I would definitely use in the physical classroom, because I don't want students handing me a piece of paper. I love the fact that I can give them a link. They could do their exit ticket, and then at the end, I have that record digitally ready for me to sort through and leave little remarks on with stickies, giving them some feedback on their exit tickets. Or if I don't give them feedback on the exit tickets, just digitally being able to scroll through and see, okay, this is what they seem to get out of the lesson, and these are things that I might need to cover later. I'd rather have it digitally than a bunch of paper. Collaborative brainstorming, we talked about that a little bit, but I'll show you some examples of brainstorming. And I almost put collaboratively in, or collaborative in parentheses, because I actually think it's a great tool for making students brainstorming visible, whether they are collaborating or doing it individually. Concept mapping or graphic organizers. Again, there are a lot of free templates for that. And I've used, like, for example, a Venn diagram, and it's pretty easy to find a Venn diagram online and then set that as the background for students. Or for like a mind map. There are other great tools for mind maps, but you can put those on as a template on Google Jamboard. Manipulative activities is the big one. And I'm going to pause here and talk about why I started using Jamboard in the first place. As an ESL teacher and as a writing instructor, I was a very kinesthetic teacher who used a lot of manipulatives. So I was telling Anne Marie about this before we got started, and she was like, sentence strips. And I said, exactly. I had sentence strips. I would take an essay that was a model essay and cut it up and then make the students arrange the parts, just to help them understand the structure of an essay, vocabulary sorting, all sorts of things that I would go into the physical classroom with all those cut up pieces of paper, because I really feel like it promotes more active learning and deeper understanding of the structure of things. And when we went to remote, when the pandemic first happened, that was so difficult for me. I was really hurting, like, how do I bring that into my remote teaching? I can't figure out how to make that happen. And then I attended a PD session that used Jamboard for some activity, and I immediately recognized this is what I have been looking for something that provides manipulatives. So it became my immediate go-to when I wanted a sorting activity of any kind to use Jamboard. And I'll show you an example of that too. You can use it for individual activities. I've talked some about collaborative. I showed you that sample Jamboard, and it was not an individual activity, but you can create individual jams for your students and have them do like a book report on it. We're going to look at a book report template. So it isn't always necessary to make it collaborative or to have a bunch of people on one jam. So book reviews, You could give math assignments. We'll look at an example of that. Planning of writing and vocabulary exercises. And these are just a few. There are so many different ways that you could use it for individual assignments. So let's look at some sample jams, because I would like for you to see a few ideas like I've been talking about. So we're going to start by looking at one that is an opener activity. So this was a jam that was called Gratitude Jar. And we did this probably at Thanksgiving, but I can't remember for sure. And these are my real students. This was back in 2020. And I asked them to make a sticky that said what they're grateful for. And I did not have this many students. This is indicative of my students had a lot of things they were grateful for, and they created at least 2, if not more, stickies. And it's just a great, very quick activity once your students like get the hang of Jamboard, and that I recommend, like, if they get the hang of it, just keep using it. But it's a great opening activity. And you can even, like, if you have kind of that rolling start where students are coming in for the first 10 minutes, you know, you can have it up the minute the first student comes in, and then you just keep commenting or like asking questions as new students come in and new stickies go up there. You can ask like, hey, do you want to tell the group about that or say anything about it? One thing, though, is that I said I would tell you some of the limitations. You cannot see the name of who has posted a sticky. You have to either ask them to write their name, type their name on the sticky note, or say, who is it that has new plants? Do you want to tell us about that? And then they'll have to like unmute themselves and tell you about that. So that is a limitation that I don't love, that you can't automatically see who has posted things. And this is an example of an exit ticket. And I talked about free templates. There are multiple free templates on this one that I got from the internet, but I left it on this one because I really liked this one. So you could create one of these for each student and ask them to go on and fill it out at the end of class. And then you have a record of what helped improve their knowledge that day and why they gave that answer, or whatever other exit ticket you would like to use. This is one that I did that is just super simple, no template, no background of any kind, but the students went to breakout rooms. They each had their own page. So group 1 was on page 1, and up at the top right here, you can see that you can scroll through to different pages, and each group went to their own page or their own frame or slide. It's in Jamboard vocabulary, it's called a frame, and they had to sort it. So they worked together as a group to sort and move the stickies into the right location. So you can see here is a finished product. Group 2 sorted their stickies and put the type of paragraph, the definition up underneath the type of the paragraph. So a simple sorting activity that they did as a group. This sticky is one I used in a different writing class. They started out as a group doing this group brainstorm where it was about sports and types of sports. And it was a small class. They were working together and then making connections. So as they wrote different things on stickies, others were kind of moving them around and then categorizing. And then they worked together to sort some basic steps in writing an essay. So when they opened this page, it was all mixed up in different areas, and then they sorted it themselves. And then you get to each student's individual brainstorming. So you can see up here in the right-hand corner, this was Alfredo, and he brainstormed his essay, and then he started moving things around. He X'd out puzzles because he didn't want to use it. And I was watching him, and I could leave a sticky note just giving him some encouragement. Here's another one. This was Misato's essay. So the great thing is that you can watch and see in real time just what thinking processes are happening. And then you can also leave some encouragement or some suggestions. Anne Marie was talking before we started about how it's a great way for a teacher to leave a comment or ask a question without having to interrupt, because you can just stick a sticky on there and then, you're not having to really interrupt them, especially if it's a group and they're doing something together. You don't have to interject your voice. You can just put something there for them to notice.
And Michelle, we've got 3 good questions
Great.
that I think are timely. So the first one is, how hard would it be for a student who is attending a Zoom class on their phone to simultaneously participate in a jam? And I think that's a great question. So that's question number 1.
Great. So, Carrie, I don't know if you were here in the beginning. I did mention that just to even be on the jam from the phone, you have to have the app downloaded onto your phone. So that's number 1, is the app has to be downloaded. Once they open the jam, and all they have to do is, if they have the app downloaded, they click on the link that you've put in the chat box on Zoom, and it will open in the app, and then they can do different things using the app. And always, and this is something I have to train my students in for anything we do, is that when you're on a phone and you have anything else open on your computer, there's a little strip at the top of the phone that is indicative that you also have Zoom still going. And so I have to train them for anything, whether it's Jamboard or something else. If you want to come back to the Zoom screen so that you can see me, then you need to click on that strip at the top of the phone, and then it will, it will move back to Zoom, and then they won't be able to see the jam. So, but seeing both the jam and Zoom at the same time, it's not going to really work on the phone. But usually when they're working on a jam, I don't need them to see Zoom. I just need them to know how to navigate back to Zoom when they're finished.
And Michelle, a follow-up to Carrie's question, compatible with both Android and Apple devices, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then Lily, I think there's a clarification question. You talked about putting them in breakout groups when they were working on their essay, and you referred to being in Zoom in breakout rooms, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then she says, I guess for the face-to-face class, we can ask students to download the Jamboard, yes, and play the game together.
Yes. Okay. And that's what I would do. If I haven't taught a face-to-face class in a really long time. I was teaching online before the pandemic started. I think I did have 3 weeks of face-to-face at a new job right before the shutdown. But mostly my last face-to-face teaching was in 2019. So if I were to use Jamboard in a face-to-face class, I would, the first week of class, make sure that everybody downloads the Jamboard app onto their phone and do a little basic training like what I'm going to do with you today on the tools. And then I would use it a lot. I want to go back just on that Zoom question to show you how I would set this up. So I would tell my students, I would have groups pre-created, my idea of my groups in my head, and then I would put those in the chat box. Like group 1 is Dahlia, Misato, and Alfredo. Group 2 is Aurora and Susie and Fernando, and put that in the chat box. And then I would show them, when you open the chat box, you're going to scroll through and find your group. These are already all completed, but they had group 1 and group 2 behind them. And then you're going to work on the page that has your group number. After I've told them that, that's when I will put the link to the jam in the chat box. Because if I put it in there before then, they stop listening to me and my instructions. So I wait until I've given them instructions, any demos that I need to give them, demonstrations, and then I put the link in the chat box and say, now open jam, and then I send them to the breakout rooms. So it definitely matters the order you do those things in. If you want your students to make it to the breakout room with the right instructions and actually be able to start working immediately. And then what I usually do is the minute they're all in their breakout rooms, I start cycling through those breakout rooms, kind of asking, did everybody get the link? Are you all there? Are there any questions? But I'm also watching from my Jamboard, watching their work.
And Michelle, Carrie just jumped in and said, and then, so you give the instructions and then you put the Zoom link to the Zoom in the chat pod, right? Or the link.
We're already on Zoom. The link to I put the link to the Jam in the chat pod after I've given them the instruction. And the other thing, a great thing that they can do is if they're on the Jam, but they've forgotten what they are supposed to do, or they've gotten confused, all they have to do is do a sticky note and say, group 2 needs help, and put it on there. And then if I'm watching the Jam, I see that and I can be like, okay, I'll run over to group 2 and help them out. So it's also a great way for them to signal to you, please come help me. I'm going to delete that. Okay, looking at a couple more examples, and then we're going to go onto a Jam that I prepared for you today. This is a book review template, which is really great. And you can assign this on Google Classroom. And when you do that, it will create a separate Jam for each student, so they're not seeing each other's work. I love this one. I thought it was really nice. And then this is a math one. I didn't want the math people in here to feel left out. So I played around with this one a little bit. I thought it was really fun. So you just use the shapes and then you draw a shape around the animal, and then you count the squares and do your work on perimeter and area, which is a really great way for students to do some math work. There were some other math templates that were free that were on linear equations and functions, but my math isn't that great, so I didn't choose that one as an example for you to see today. Okay, we're going to go on to look at a Jam that I have prepared for everyone to work on today. I'm going to pause. Are there any other questions before we start looking at this?
Yes, I appreciate the quick pause here. Lilia asks, can this be used in Microsoft Teams? Or does it have to be Zoom? Yes, is the answer for Lilia.
I'm sorry, this is Carlotta again. As you know, I can't type my question, but I have 2 questions. You said they have that math and equation, linear and functions.
Yes.
Okay, I can use that. And then, go ahead.
Well, Carlotta, that is not just on Jamboard, but if you search for like free templates on Jamboard, then you'll find it.
Okay. All right. And then my second question was, like Michelle, you had showed a background and then students had their little sticky notes on there. Now, when I share my Jamboard with my students, I give them editor rights, but some of them always seem to delete my information. So how can I avoid that? Okay.
I'm hoping we're going to get to the answer to that question today, Carlotta. It is on my list of things that I want to show you how to do, but it's at the more advanced end of the list.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
And just to answer that Teams question, if you're in Teams, you would drop the link to your Jam in the chat on Teams the same way you would on Zoom. And then they would go and be working on that Jam. So it'll work the same. All right, we're going to get started. I've shared my PowerPoint again with you to show you how you even get to Jamboard. So if you're on Google Start page, any Google Start page, and you look at that little top right-hand 9-dot grid and click on it, you'll have to scroll down some because when you first click on it, you don't get to Jamboard. You don't see Jamboard, but you will eventually see Jamboard. So that is one way to do it. And another way is just to type www.jamboard.com. So here we are looking at a Google page. And if I click right here and I scroll down, I eventually see Jamboard. So I can click on it and that will get me to Jamboard. but I can also just type in jamboard.google.com. So this is my Jamboard page, and this is where all of my jams are stored. So you can see I have quite a few here. That is one way to get to my jams. I can also save my jams in different files on my Google Drive, but if I don't save them into a certain folder on Google Drive, then this is where they reside on Jamboard. So I often just type in Jamboard to go find the ones that I want. Now we're going to look at the Jamboard that I have created for today. And here you can see the different tools that are available on Jamboard. So they're always going to be over here. If you're on a computer, they're always over here on the left. And then you click on the caret beside them and it will give you some other options. So for the draw tool, I can have the pen, the marker, a highlighter, a paintbrush, and I can choose different colors. And so if I do that, let's say I want to do a blue marker. Then I come over here and I can do all of that. Now let's say I don't like that, then I can click on the eraser and I can erase it. Or if I want to quickly erase it, I'll click up here on the top, clear frame. Clear frame, though, is going to erase everything that is not set as a background. So if you only want to erase a small part, then use the eraser tool. If you want to erase everything that is not set as a background, use clear frame. And set as a background, this is the part, Carlotta, that I may or may not get to today. We'll see. The pointer one right here, the select tool, I have never used this one, and I've watched multiple videos on what it does, and everybody always seems to kind of say, this is a select tool and skip over it. So I'm going to just do that today too. The sticky note is one of the most common ones to use. If you click on that, you can choose a color of your sticky note. You write in your sticky note, and then you have to click save. And then if you want to do another one, you can. If you are finished, then you click anywhere outside of the sticky note. So I'm going to click there. Now here's my sticky note. I can click on it and hold my mouse down and drag it anywhere. And a lot of times my students, they don't fully understand that. And every sticky note gets, when any student puts a new sticky note on the board, on the jam, it ends up in the same location. So they're piling up on top of each other. So what I do is while my students are putting new sticky notes up, I'm just constantly moving the most recent one to another location so that you can see all of them. Some students quickly catch on that they can move them, but some do not. The other things you can do with the sticky note, you can enlarge it by clicking on the top right, or bottom left corner. And if you click on the top left corner, you can rotate it. Again, I have to hold my left key on my mouse down to be able to do that. You can also edit it. You can duplicate it. You can delete it. Or if you have stickies on top of stickies, you can change the order of them. Since these look just alike, that doesn't really matter. You can also add an image. I like adding images. So your students, they can upload an image if they want. They can use a camera and take a picture of themselves. The first time they do that, it's going to ask, do you want to allow Jamboard to use your camera? And you would have to click allow. You can do a Google image search. So maybe yesterday I was doing a lesson on tipping, and I used this image right here, actually. And then again, with that one, you can make it smaller or bigger. You can rotate it.
Michelle, can Anne Marie ask a quick question really quick? Is this where you could download that image that you just had it and then set it as the background? And I put that as a question in the chat pod. Can you download a picture and then set it as the background?
Okay. To set background, you have to use this one. So instead of using over here on the left, the add image tool, you would go to the set background tool. And that is where you can download an image and set it as your background. And then when you clear the frame, it stays. And when a student accidentally hits the backspace bar, it stays, which is nice.
Okay, thank you.
And so here's a new feature that wasn't there the last time I was teaching with Jamboard. You can add all sorts of shapes. So you can add circles, all these different shapes, and you can set the shape color. So up here, I can say I want it to have a green border and I want it to be, oh, it can only be white if it has a green border. All right. Then I can drag it. I'm going to see if I can change to a black border. Oh, there we go. So you can change the color, you can change the border, and you can make it bigger, you can rotate it. So that could be useful for all sorts of images that you want your students to work with or create. You can also just add a simple text box. And there again, you can choose your text color and your alignment. And then this last feature is a laser pointer. So the laser pointer would be good for demonstrating something if you want to draw attention to it. Okay, so we're going to now get on Jamboard so that you can do a little playing around. And to do that, I have to show you how I can share this Jamboard with all of you and make it where you can edit it or draw on it. So if you're familiar with Google products, it's the same process that you would do with Google Slides or a Google Doc, but you go up here to share, you click on share, and then you need to go down here and make sure you change this to anyone with the link. And right now, that means they can only look at it, but they can't edit it. But I want them to be able to edit it. I want you to be able to edit it. Then I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to put it in the chat box for all of you. So up at the very top, I forgot to show you these instructions before you got on. Up at the very top, you'll see in the top middle, it will say 1/10. That means you're on frame 1 out of 10, and there are arrow keys to the left and the right. If you click on the right arrow, it will be next frame. And I want you to go to frame 2 so you can see the limitations. So one of the limitations is there are only 50 users at one time. Another limitation is you can only create 20 frames per jam. And it is easy for users to delete each other's work. That's something you have to be really aware of. But we're going to go ahead and go to the exit ticket frame. Frames 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are exit tickets.
Jillian asked a question. Can you tell who's writing? Can review that? Okay.
That is one of the limitations. So if I really want to know, then what I would do is create a separate page for each person. And I would put a sticky with their name on that page and tell them, go to the frame with your name on it and complete that one. But I didn't know how many people would be in today's session, or and I couldn't create that many frames because you can only do 20 frames.
I want to thank everybody that joined today, and I want to thank Michelle Vick for being an incredible presenter. And I do want to give a shout out to all of you who joined today. On behalf of Train PD at TCall, we thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCall continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.